the professor would firmly close all the windows before every class. Even during the scorching days of summer, he paid no heed to the students' discomfort. Until one day, a beautiful female student could no longer endure the professor's odd behavior. She stood up and opened the window right in front of him. The girl knew very well that the professor wanted to avoid outside noise, but she had a better solution.
We have a little problem. It's extremely hot in here with the windows closed and extremely noisy with them open. So I was wondering if there's any way you could, I don't know, maybe work someplace else for about 45 minutes?
Not a problem.
Thank you so much.
Her emotional act broke the professor's rigid routine and silently opened his closed heart. For the rest of the class, the professor wore a faint smile, but little did the professor know that this girl would completely change his life. The professor's name was Nick. He had been a student at Princeton, but he never attended a single class after enrolling. When his roommate Charles questioned him, Nick replied that he couldn't waste time on books. Every student admitted to Princeton was a genius. Their theories had broken new ground in their respective fields, but Nick believed he was even smarter than these geniuses. He had no interest in building on existing theories. He wanted to create an entirely new one to prove himself. Other students thought he was eccentric, and Nick's behavior was indeed perplexing. He would study pigeons' movement patterns in the square, hoping to develop a theory that would stun the academic world. His classmates nearly laughed themselves sick. Nick wasn't angered by their mockery. Instead, he locked himself in the library for 2 days, hoping to produce something that would make them see him in a new light. But while his peers completed their theses, his original theory remained elusive. With graduation approaching, Nick's advisor grew increasingly concerned. He kindly reminded Nick that original theories were rarely achieved at his age. Yet despite this well-intentioned advice, Nick stubbornly insisted on pursuing his own theory. He shut himself in his dorm, frantically sketching early ideas on the windows. But as always, the numbers made no sense to him. Charles couldn't bear to see Nick so discouraged. He told him that insight comes from engagement with the world. Locking oneself away only leads to stagnation. True breakthroughs require breaking through the window, both literally and metaphorically. To push Nick out of his gloom, Charles tossed Nick's manuscripts and table out the window, joking that this was how Newton's theory was born. With Charles's unconventional encouragement, Nick regained his confidence. He tried finding inspiration for his theory in a bar. Just as he began drafting his paper, a few classmates approached his table. They had all taken a liking to a blonde woman, and Nick's table happened to be right in front of hers. After some discussion, they decided to compete for her attention based on Adam Smith's theory of competition. The loser would have to pursue her friend. But as Nick observed the woman, a different idea came to him.
Adam Smith needs revision.
What are you talking about?
We'll go for the blonde. We block each other. Not a single one of us is going to get it. So then we go for her friends. But they will all give us the cold shoulder because nobody likes to be second choice. What if no one goes for the blonde? We don't get in each other's way, and we don't insult the other girls. That's the only way we win.
And so game theory was born. Nick pointed out a flaw in Adam Smith's competition theory. He believed competitors should reach a consensus and establish self-regulating rules so that everyone could achieve their desired outcome. Otherwise, each person would only hinder the others. That was the difference between cooperation and competition. Nick had an epiphany. He rushed out of the bar, electrified. He had derived game theory from a pickup strategy. He returned to his dorm and worked through the night, finally refining his unique theory of Nash equilibrium. His advisor was impressed. Once published, the paper would 150 years of belief in the supremacy of self-interest. We all know the story of the 3 monks who had no water to drink. If they had applied Nash equilibrium, negotiating until all 3 were satisfied, each would have had water to drink. At that moment, Nick's talent was confirmed. After the paper was published, he received widespread acclaim. Even Martin, who had previously looked down on him, was won over by the Nash equilibrium. Upon graduation, Nick was invited to join the Wheeler Lab, as he'd always dreamed. 5 years into his career, he was recruited for a secret project at the Pentagon. The military wanted his help cracking Soviet telegraph codes. His talent did not disappoint. He quickly identified patterns in walls of numbers and used these coordinates to pinpoint key locations on a map, successfully thwarting a Soviet plan. Normally, Nick would have been returned to campus immediately after, but a figure in black caught his attention. The man watched Nick intently, but didn't approach to offer congratulations, which left Nick feeling uneasy. To his surprise, the man showed up at his door that very night. He introduced himself as William, from a secret defense department. Impressed by Nick's mathematical prowess at the Pentagon, he wanted Nick to serve his country. William took Nick to a secret base, telling him it was where he could achieve great things. The nation was facing a spy crisis. Soviet agents were using codes in newspapers and magazines to transmit information. He wanted Nick to decrypt these codes and help avert the crisis. Nick gladly accepted the challenging task. William then implanted a diode in him. The numbers on it would change randomly like game tokens, becoming the password for dead drops. And so Nick became a high-level agent. When his career peaked, love followed. One day, while teaching at MIT, construction noise outside irritated him. Ignoring the students' complaints, he shut all the windows, promptly sparking discontent. In those days, classrooms had no air conditioning. Closed windows made the room stifling. Nick sternly told the students that quiet was more important than comfort. But one female student ignored him and opened the window herself. This brings us to the opening scene. Her emotional act broke Nick's rigid routine and silently opened his closed heart. He wore a faint smile throughout the class. Later, he presented a challenge on the blackboard, a problem that smart students might solve in a month or two, while others might never crack it. To his astonishment, the girl solved it in just one day. But Nick didn't believe she had the right answer, and indeed, she was wrong. He returned her book and turned back to decoding, but the girl didn't leave. Instead, she asked him out. Her boldness caught him off guard, but her sunny smile stirred something in him. He decided to seize the opportunity. Since he was attending the governor's banquet that night, he took her along. Her name was Ella. At the event, she wore a black dress and stood confidently by his side. While Nick took photos with the governor, Ella naturally adjusted his attire and tucked her handkerchief into his chest pocket to make him look more gentlemanly. Her thoughtful gestures made his heart race. They soon became a couple and eventually married. William attended the wedding, but stayed in his car, which made Nick uneasy. Sure enough, late one night, as Nick was about to make a dead drop, William hurried him into a car. Their cover was blown. Spies had discovered them and were in pursuit. During the chase, William handed Nick a gun, but Nick couldn't bring himself to take it. William ended up shooting the pursuing spy himself, saving their lives. From that day on, Nick became extremely cautious. Anyone in black on the street made his heart race. His mental state deteriorated. No one knew what the brilliant professor had been through. After class, Nick returned to his office and found William waiting for him. Nick told William his wife was pregnant, and he wanted to quit, but William was firm. If Nick stopped working, he would lose the Defense Department's protection. Nick felt trapped. He grew even more cautious, afraid to even turn on the lights at night, thinking her husband was becoming paranoid. Ella called a mental hospital. The next day, Nick said he was attending a seminar at Harvard. Charles came with his niece to congratulate him. Stressed, Nick confessed his work for the Defense Department to Charles and asked for advice. Before they could talk further, a colleague reminded him the seminar was starting. There, Nick realized he was being watched. He forgot all about the seminar, bolted out the back door, and ran. But he was soon intercepted. The men claimed to be psychiatrists and asked to talk. Nick believed they were Soviet spies in disguise and punched one before trying to flee. But they overpowered him, pinned him down, and injected him with a sedative. He blacked out. When he woke, he was chained up. Nearby, he saw Charles, unchained. Nick realized Charles had betrayed him, but then a man told him there was no one else in the room. No Charles. The mental hospital soon concluded Nick had schizophrenia, but Ella couldn't accept that her husband was mentally ill. She thought if she could find William, she could prove Nick was telling the truth. She hurried to Nick's office, found an address, and went to an abandoned villa. There, she found a mailbox filled with unopened letters.